Medicine is truly where you are. And tonight we listen with Magenta Light, founder of Bloom Network, where community-led innovation travels from one place to another without losing its soul. Bloom Network is the world's first regenerative social media cooperative, aiming to turn online participation into funding and support for real-world, on-the-ground, local regenerative action. It's sunny here in the Jemez Mountains after days of rain. The deer are eating the fallen apples. So, Magenta, where are you arriving from, and what is this season asking of you?
I'm in southern New Hampshire, and it's like an hour inland from Boston, and it's fall here, but we're activating marketing, which is very spring-like. So transition time, I guess. Lots of transitions. There's so many new energies coming into bloom. So yeah, season transition in multiple ways.
That's beautiful. So let's start really rooted, and I would love to hear what one of your first memories are of land or nature, water or food, and specifically how that's shaped your design in general and especially at Bloom.
Yeah, I grew up in northeastern Montana in the Great Plains, just at the edge of the Badlands in North Dakota. And yeah, I spent much of my childhood wandering around in native prairie land, actually. So my earliest memories of nature are plants, and the earth still had the crust on it. Um, and just wandering around. There's some granite rocks there, so like sparkly rocks and all kinds of wildflowers. So enjoying the diversity of that, and really, my mind forming around those, the way nature communicates and the interconnection of life and the elements. And that's, I think, the foundation for my work with Bloom. So many people grow up in urban environments, and it's just natural to me to like be in connection with where food is growing around me. And yeah, nature is, and it's totally quiet and totally dark there at night, so you can see the whole Milky Way. So those are all embedded in my memory and my soul and my body and the way I speak.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense now. I'm bringing up images of some of your design, and I'm like, okay, now I know the root of that. Do you have any family stories that emerged through your family of your grandparents or your ancestors doing gardening or farming or working with nature?
Yeah, on my father's side, my family are farmers going back, and builders. Our cousins are builders. And I know less about my mom's side of the family. I think they've been in the US longer. My grandparents moved here from Germany because they didn't want to become Nazis. Um, and my grandma, she grew up with 12 kids all in a one-room shack as a homesteader.
Mm.
The deal was, the US government would give farmers land if they would come and farm, obviously stolen Indian land. Um, and yeah, so they were self-sufficient for the most part. Once in a while, they would have money, they would use it for probably, I mean, I'm sure they made their own flour. I remember her talking about getting fabric at a store, but they would always like reuse everything. Like when she was older, pantyhose, once they would wear out, they would use them for other things. And she always had a garden until she couldn't garden anymore, like well into her 90s, I think.
Mm.
She loved growing zucchini. She always canned food, and there's always dried apples in her pantry. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. We're not so far from our farming and gardening lineage, and it's heartwarming to hear how it travels in our families like that. So thank you so much for that. Um, when did you know in when did you know that Bloom had to exist? Like, and what was that note you put down on a napkin that kind of put it into motion?
Well, I walked into Bloom before it was called Bloom. It existed before I came into it. I had been working with a activist collective called Radical Women, who trains women to be leaders in social movements, especially lifting up the voices of queer women of color because they're under multiple layers of oppression, so they see clearly what needs to change for everyone to be well. But I noticed one of the things they were missing was intergenerational trauma healing tools, and so I went out looking for who has those, and I found the plant medicine community in San Francisco. Evolver, which is the name of our former parent company, was hosting an event on shamanism. So I showed up to that, and yeah, a little bit after that got pulled into organizing because I had met a woman who wanted to create the source, the sanctuary for reawakening consciousness. And she
Mm.
wanted to do it in Peru and have it be a center of psychedelics, spirituality, and science. And she described like where you could have tea with a Buddhist monk and a physicist. And I thought, all right, that's freaking amazing. She came up and talked to me because I had this like Technicolor rainbow coat that I had made. And she was also like a fashionista. She was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. I want to go talk to the girl with the cool coat. Um, and she is just like this incredible human and creative person. Like, okay, I'm gonna help you make this happen. It's gonna take a lot of people and skills and money. So let's get together everyone we know and have like a business sharing circle because we're many entrepreneurs and so forth. Probably between all of us, we have the skill sets each other needs to get going. And I did that event with what became Bloom, our local chapter in the Bay Area. Um, but at some point in 2011, like I just noticed everyone needed a sustainable business model, like the organizers around the world. This was already there were like 200 local chapters, and the often the organizers would burn out because there is a lot of work. We were doing monthly meetups everywhere, and yeah, it's a lot of work, and there wasn't money for it. So I was like, all right, the best thing I could do with all my capacity and intelligence is like get these folks a sustainable business model. And I embarked on a prayer for right livelihood for myself and my Earth family. That's just the message that came through. And I lived on gift economy for like 6 years, and just opened myself to what that process would be. I didn't realize we'd have to invent stuff and it would take a long time, but that's how I got involved.
Wow. 6 years of a gift economy. That's incredible. And you were in San Francisco at that time?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
that
then
is
I moved out farther into Grass Valley in 2012, and I was bunk buddies with a 4-year-old for a while, stayed in tents on friends' properties, that kind of thing.
oh, amazing. I mean, I want to hear, I want to read a book from that period of your life. Just a little bug in your ear. So, I think a lot of what regenerative endeavor sort of faces and has to sort of do along the way is sort of re-script, right? Some of the things that we think we already understand. And one of them for me has been the commons and why it's not a tragedy of the commons, that's actually just a pain signal, not the way things actually are. So, and I see Bloom as just so elegantly closing the loop on how to operate within a true commons, right? So, can you share a moment where the local kind of meets commons within Bloom and how they kind of feed each other through your different modalities that you've created along the way, or like, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say most of the local Bloom hubs are creating commons in the sense of, event spaces. Sometimes they'll form community centers. They're often coalitions of businesses, nonprofits, and mutual aid groups, and individual practitioners and business owners. And they're sharing knowledge, they're sharing tools, they're sharing various resources they have. Several of them use like the 8 forms of capital or similar frameworks, to just bring together what they have to help each other and make the visions and projects that they're trying to implement real. And so, from that common sharing environment emerges like caring for their ecologies, and um, people will meet each other and form businesses or help each other start them. Often businesses kind of like spring out of these things.
Mm.
And then and people are forming land trusts, they're forming networked cooperatives. At this point, we're starting to have community-owned regenerative supply chains with global distribution centers that are also owned by the cooperatives, and hopefully Bloom Network itself soon. And so on the global level is just another fractal layer of that. It's all these local coalitions around the world coming together, sharing knowledge, sharing resources. It's largely modeled on how mushrooms work in nature and the way that they're symbiotic, and they're sharing resources and information across the forest floor. And that's really what our architecture is kind of modeled on. So like the commons of nature, the sharing of resources as nature. And then slowly building more sophisticated human collaboration structures around that, both at the local level and globally. So, like a couple concrete examples, globally, we have a list of like development templates. So, like at each stage of development of your local coalition or individual business, you have resources on, forming a company, forming a team, legal templates for forming a land trust. And we also develop these in partnership with other groups, like the Farmers Land Trust is one of the partners who is making those legal templates I just mentioned. And so it's like an open structure in that way too, right? Not all of the local communities even know Bloom exists. It's very like open and organic. The whole thing is like that. So does that answer your question about the comments?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, and they're all kind of interrelated, right? Like, so, like, you've already mentioned right relationship and practice, and I see Bloom as kind of supporting that, and how, I mean, nature should it's sort of the operation of Bloom reflects nature, and nature reflects Bloom, right? And so, um, yeah, it does. I just feel like like nature already works as a commons, and so I liked hearing that Bloom is reflecting that, or sort of modeling, or basing some of their modeling on what's already natural, or what's already
Yeah,
within
yeah, I
nature.
think all of us really, I mean, like I mentioned plant medicines in the beginning, and that's, one aspect of the different social movements that we connect together.
Yeah.
But most of us, the local organizers that coordinate as Bloom Network, as a cooperative, we're speaking from a place of like deep connection with the plants and earth and ecology and the elements, which creates like such an interesting culture because it's not like we're like a single widget or single issue company. It's like we're here to care for nature and care for each other and facilitate the liberation and well-being of that.
Mm,
Yeah.
so gorgeous. Yeah, I don't, it's fascinating because I mean it is an organization, and there are certain, yeah, it's definable as Bloom, and yet it's the complexity reflects nature, and it actually works and feels like you're doing the proof, and there's just this, it's almost like, how do you describe symbiosis? Well, you have to live symbiosis, and you're doing that through your network in such a beautiful way. And you brought up sort of right livelihood, but I'm wondering too about right relationship, and in practice, like, what maybe can you describe maybe a choice where Bloom had to hold this right relationship among funders or locals or stewards? Was there a time that stood out for you, as you built protocols or something like that?
Yeah, yeah, and I think relationships is the one thing I missed when talking about the commons is like relationality is the foundation of it and developing really deep, consensual, reciprocal relationships.
Mm.
And part of that, I'm actually talking on a panel next week about this, is like protections around those relationships. And that happens on many levels, right? Protecting these communities from various kinds of dynamics, like teaching people how to vet their organizing teams and how to notice when someone's being like power over other people or trying to grab power in a way that is destructive or divisive. And setting a boundary with that person, maybe pulling them out of the organizing team, for example, or having processes in place to be slow to bring someone into a position of whatever relative power that is there until you like know them and trust them. At the global level, we typically wait 3 years of knowing someone before they're in a position where they have a lot of power and access to network systems. For that reason, it takes that long for those kinds of personality dynamics to emerge.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, I mean that's a really deep process. Some of the local blooms that are, I mean, you have that on a business level with some of the local blooms who are running cooperatives and making sure the business is operating efficiently, folks are following through and doing their jobs and that kind of thing. And then also in a land trust kind of situation where you're collectively owning land and stewarding that. There's a couple local blooms that are in places where a lot of expats are moving in,
Mm,
so doing education with them, because a lot of the local bloom hubs are in deep relationship with indigenous communities or are themselves indigenous communities. And so orienting expats to, how to not bring waste into the community, how to build in traditional ways that don't add toxic materials into the soil and the waterways and that kind of stuff.
oh, gorgeous. Do some of these things emerge through the impact reports, or the like? How does that end up showing up in the ecosystem in the commons of Bloom?
Yeah, I mean, one of the like main things is Bloom is in some ways like an oral culture. Like we have a once a month we have a community leadership call with all the local Bloom leaders. Obviously, their own community has many expressions of leadership, right? But a few folks tend to be more in touch with the global network than others. And so a lot of that emerges in a facilitated relationship with each other. We're talking on calls, asking deep questions, supporting one another, and then like one-on-one or small group relationships form where folks are prototyping a certain thing together or mentoring each other, that kind of thing. Starting to organize across their local blooms to larger bioregional coordination and networking with, things that aren't necessarily overtly bloom, but are like very values aligned in a region. And then they'll share those in impact reports and on these quarterly calls. And again, through these organic relationships and communication that aren't really like mediated by Bloom, through email, through Telegram, WhatsApp, that kind of thing. Um, and yeah, and the impact reports as well. I mean, those are really, an impact report is a type of blog post on bloomnetwork.earth where folks it has like guided questions to help folks share about specific actions they're doing in their community and sharing, what their goals are, what the project is about, the actions they did, what kind of resources they put into it, what challenges they faced, and sharing learnings with the network. It's really a hybrid, like set up to help them learn to communicate to outside stakeholders and new participants, like the public, as well as financial stakeholders, in a way that people can understand the meaning and importance of what they're doing. And then where the impacts, like the beneficial outcomes that their activities are having, as well as any needs or asks for support they have. So it's again one of these like comprehensive systems and you helped design the recent upgrade to that to make sure it's following a natural being framework in a way that our marketing team and grants team can then pull out insights from it to help these folks build financial and growth capacity. Um, and yeah, that knowledge sharing happens through. There's also you can create a how-to on Bloom as well, and those are fully public. So there's a lot of how-tos up there on like how to start a CSA program, community-supported agriculture, or how to start an urban farm, or how to set up a community-owned solar. So that's another way that we share knowledge through the digital network.
Beautiful, beautiful. And what are you really innovating at Bloom? Like, tell me.
Oh, well, I mean, there's layers of it, right? Like it's quite decentralized. Like on the ground, people are innovating, like, agroforestry techniques, different planting techniques, way to restore their local microclimates, mitigate flood risk. Like the Bloom in Uganda is planting 500 indigenous species amidst for export crops, so they have income, but they're also creating these arboretums that are like beautiful places for communities to be. It took them 20 years, but they got permaculture approved throughout the Ugandan school curriculum. So they're
Incredible.
teaching kids permaculture, but it's intertwined with teaching them entrepreneurship. And so the kids will go home and plant organic food gardens in their homes, and so their household have fresh local food. They actually plant coffee at the schools, and the profits from the coffee cooperatives go, and which Bloom now just like, what's the word, PSA or plug for, we just co-branded coffee with the Ugandan Bloom Hub, and you can buy it on Bloom, shop.bloomnetwork.earth. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Um, and they own their whole distribution system. So they have distribution fulfillment centers in Germany and the US, and those are co-owned by their local cooperatives. They really want Bloom to invest in them so that it's fully values aligned permaculture ethos supply chain and
Mm.
distribution. So that's one anecdote of like integrated local global business connection. And in one way, Bloom is a distribution network. Like it's not just a social network that's harvesting attention and data from people. Again, it's like deeply relational. Its power structure is more like this instead of like this, right? So money, resources, attention come in. It guides people to, connect with your neighbors, do things in the real world. The goal is not to stick you on the platform, but leave you there just long enough to get inspired, find the people near you. Like their local media feed, so the whole architecture is place-based and oriented around finding the projects and
Wow.
um, people, events that you can get involved with where you live and then make magic together. And then really, everything about the global collaboration is meant to facilitate that and facilitate peer-to-peer sharing rather than some kind of separate, like, executive body that is making financial decisions. So the innovation at the global layer is like flipping the script on extractive media, which tries to game. Well, I mean, the way it gets you your most attention is to game your nervous system. And
Mm.
so what's danger, danger, danger? Your body is hardwired to pay attention to that, right? And the machinery around that, the marketing technology, which comes out of World War II propaganda, is so incredibly sophisticated. So much money has gone into that. And those behavior control mechanisms are very intentional and available to the highest bidder. And so Bloom is part of our governance model, which has been a huge part of our innovation, is to like, how do you make a global decentralized governance model that's resilient to power abuse and is based on these principles of reciprocity and autonomy and mutual respect? Um, and so the community like designed and co-governs the platform. So everything that you see there is because local organizers said, we're not getting this from social media, mainstream social media, and will you please build this into the platform? And
Mm.
uh, yeah, I mean, there's so many layers of innovation. Like every local bloom, if you look on there, there's like a gray water filter system that there's a full instructions for how to set it up so that like waste, like soaps from industrial kitchen nearby don't end up like in the creek and then in this incredibly gorgeous waterfall that is nearby. And very obviously the ocean's not too far away. So that whole cycle is very visible to them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they're innovating, like different local blooms are innovating zero waste things from mycelium production to, teaching communities to not only like, recycle your waste, but not make it in the first place. And how do we provide food that way? How do we organize our communities so that we're not, like hopping in a car and commuting to some job for some extractive company, but how are we providing for each other with local markets, with local builders, with local various kinds of products, and then integrated with the global distribution network so that our economic systems, which is one of the other innovation layers of Bloom, are truly community-led, truly place-based through and through, so that we're respecting the autonomy and integrity of nature in all the places we live, and making sure our global collaboration infrastructure and our media structure is wired to that, to like nature
Mm.
well-being.
Amazing. So, given that, like, how would a new practice or a new incubation appear and then spread through Bloom? Like, what might that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think your cohort is probably like a very good example and top of mind. Tina recently ran the first Signal cohort through Bloom Network and is about to start the second one. And you've been developing that on your own for a long time.
Yeah, true.
And stemming from all of your practices as a farmer and as a marketing person and business owner and community builder. Um, and then, Bloom being a vessel for you to like put that first prototype out there and synthesize all the thoughts into a container to offer to more people. And so you've been teaching the local Bloom hubs how to craft, it's called signal craft, so how to craft their messaging in ways that are coherent, that are legible to people outside of their community and resonate on an emotional level and on a human needs level in like a deep, like community oriented way. And then people are learning that, local Bloom leaders are taking that cohort, they're taking that back into their communities. We're implementing it at the global level of Bloom to make as we activate our marketing efforts and social media efforts, make it more, there's a lot of like technical innovation in Bloom in very geeky areas. And so how do we make that, more emotionally appealing so that more people can discover these lifestyles and like come with us in the transition? Um, so yeah, that's an example of like prototyping, bringing in something you have a lot of resources in already, and then using Bloom to build it.
Yeah, and it feels so incredible to be amongst other leaders and other people that are doing. It's all ships rising. It's a it truly, like, it feels really good to operate in this way, and I think that's been it's not just theoretical. It's like the way people relate in a natural system without uh, without being extracted from. It's really it's a human feeling. It's such a pleasure. Anyway, so how does it feel to you to be sort of in the process of unveiling, or this public facing marketing step for you? How is that feeling for you?
It's
Within
incredible. It's inspiring, mildly overwhelming, but that's fine.
Yeah.
And this is the fun part. Like the last, I don't know, I got involved in Bloom at the end of 2010, and building out all the layers of infrastructure was like no fun. We had like our parent company was like abusive in this various like unfortunately typical corporate ways. This is like pre Me Too, but we had like one of those situations. The marketing coming out of that company was like really harmful for our communities. Um, at some point, they did like a kind of a pivot, and um, anyway, the healing process of that, which we went really deep on because we're like, all right, how do we heal these dynamics? This is like really common corporate dynamic. It's a common family dynamic, town, nation scale governments. Like these power structures are hurting us and people. Like, how do we, in each local place where Bloom is, do a process of decolonization and anti-colonial solidarity to really heal the places we are and build healthy relationships and healthy societies? Because from our plant medicine experiences and other transcendental experiences, people were having these, visions of what society could be like, and then we came together to build those. And like, yeah, there's the infrastructure build was real rough. Like I said, I lived on gift economy, which was not easy at all. Healthcare was really hard, and that was in a lot of physical pain the whole time. I was kind of like channeling, it felt like, through a lot of it from the medicines, the ayahuasca and mushrooms. That was also not fun. It was a lot. They're like, all right, we're gonna use your body to like assess the global human systems that are causing ecological imbalance, and then formulate an antidote for that by transforming media, like I said, to like connect to nature. And like I didn't really realize at the outside of that it'd be like so hard, or it really didn't occur to me like the magnitude of what we were all doing together, really. And those healing processes were really rough, coming up against like a lot of the collaboration dynamics before we learned to set boundaries, were really uncomfortable. The technical infrastructure, not having any resources, like, because I was a queer woman in the Bay Area trying to raise money for a feminist technology company. I have a book drafted about that. And
Yeah,
so, yeah,
good.
like no one understood what Bloom was. It was a DAO before DAOs were a thing. A DAO is
Right.
like a blockchain-based organization, but it's like a decentralized organization. We're not single issue. So we just the whole way we had to do it ourselves, and every part of it was really complicated. We eventually had once we worked out the governance to some extent, we worked with a six-person legal team out of Jason Wiener's firm in Colorado. And even just that one process, like thinking through it all, like putting it all on paper, was just a lot. It was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of high stakes, but we knew, I don't know, like when I met the Bloom community, I was like, all right, if we can get these people a sustainable business model, it's going to be game over bad guys. Like that's how in like massive the impact these people were having, right? And so I just like believed in it so strongly. But yeah, it was really hard. And now we just get to tell the stories. Like the setting up the system was really complicated. And now it's like, here's this graphic that encapsulates it all for you. You can get the download in like 5 seconds. Here's a nice little short text about it. And that is just so fun. Like done with the infrastructure phase. It's fucking built. We revolutionized this whole like unique philanthropy retroactive funding thing. It's all there. And now we just get to like tell the amazing stories about what's happening in these local communities so more people can find it, get inspired, participate. And that process is just like pure joy and creativity. And it's like bringing up the voices across the network more as well. So people really see the collective leadership. And thank you for hosting this podcast for helping with that too.
Amazing. I mean, it's the story, right? And it's the story of the fruit that's already gone through the season of blossoming and being pollinated and receiving all the messaging. And now it's like it's so incredible to be part of something that has done the work of proof in the way that you have. It's not living in theory, it's in living in practice. And what a joy to be here and be part of that. Um, yeah, I'm speechless with how much I could praise what's going on with what you've created and what you've nurtured and what you've with all your hard work. It's congratulations, actually.
Thanks. Yeah, and there were like 100 people who contributed to that process. Like I'm the only one
Yeah.
who was able to like be like, okay, I don't have a career or kids, so I can drop everything and work on this. But you know, we had a 12-person council in the outset going deep on the like dark personality things and governance and so forth. And you know, at various points there have been sets of three like professional marketing people developing the brand framework. We pulled
Yeah.
in a senior cloud architect to architect the core of our content management system, and then he taught me to code so that I could finish it because we ran out of money. He knew he wasn't going to be able to finish, which has been incredible. I wanted to learn my code my whole life. And I think
Wow.
everyone in Bloom has those kinds of stories, like some magical reason we got pulled into it, and then how our healing process and like liberation and empowerment process in our like true offerings is like blooming is really the feeling of what that's happening, and to be able to experience that with a global community, it's just it's so rich and profound, and the relationships are just so exquisite. It's yeah, really a gift.
Yeah. Does some of that reside? I mean, does some of that reside in the white? Is there a white paper that someone can kind of get a sense of the complexity of the structure and the history? Is there somewhere you can direct folks to take a look at that?
Yeah, it doesn't go into a lot of like the brand
Yeah.
history, but the white paper, it's at bloomnetwork.earth/learn/white paper. It's in the footer of the website. You can find it. And I actually broke it into four white papers because there's just so much there. So there's one that describes the business model. There's one that describes the governance model of Bloom itself. There's one that describes our regenerative economic protocol and how we use blockchain. And then there's one bioregional governance white paper that is like case studies that we've learned through all the local blooms and their adjacent organizations and movements and so forth. So that has a lot of like best practices around like watershed care, community-owned co-housing, and other cooperative real estate sorts of things, different kinds of economic stuff. Like there's an example in there of the Ohlone in Oakland, California, have what's the name of it? Um, I forget the name of it, but it's a voluntary land tax. so that based on your income, they have a little calculator based on your income. They suggest an amount that you give to the Ohlone to um, it's been a while since I looked at their website, but one of the things they were focusing on is building a, they secured land for a land trust to practice traditional ways and teach the surrounding community about those. And so that's like one example of many. There's like a whole bunch of examples in there of like if you're trying to
Nice.
transform your local and bioregional ecology, governance, economic practices, etc. Here's some guiding lights to go by.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So much of what you're describing too is kind of bringing a new lens to value. And so, can you touch on a little bit about what it means from a funding lens, or somebody who's coming in from a traditional funding structure? Like, what is it about Bloom that allows for a kind of inherent value structure that can be emergent and also supported through funding without that lens coming in and changing much, but more in a support system like that? I know there's a lot of new funding models, and I'd love a little bit of information about what really works for Bloom and within Bloom.
Yeah, one example to give first is I'm not sure folks are aware, but commonly when philanthropy comes into a social movement, the phrase for it is that it'll defang the social movement,
Mm.
because they'll be like, we'll give you money to do this specific thing. And then they start changing their organizing activities around that. And they lose the holistic community building nature that most social movements, at least most people of color led social movements, tend to have. Um, and we know we know this from like seeing the local Bloom hubs who kind of like ran into a wall, because they're coalitions. They're not centralized. They're not a single nonprofit. They're not multi-issue, and like there's so much of that around the world that is like the most impactful and most cost-effective way to achieve transformation in a community, whether it's a single issue or like the increasing amount of funders who are aware that systems change is something that we should put focus into. Um, and so we, yeah, found that we needed to design a system that would bridge that gap, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We spent many years like investigating what's out there, and where the gaps are and so forth. And so like I think we already touched on the value flows inherent in Bloom, right? And then across most of these groups, financial capital is the like missing, I would say, like fluid or gas to like accelerate the pace and scale that these innovations can replicate and populate. Um,
Beautiful.
and so, yeah, we use Inverter Network. They're a Ethereum based. They're on Optimism. It's like a lower cost network on the Ethereum network.
Okay.
Um, we use their smart contracts. They're called bounties. So in software, you have like a bug bounty. A company will put up, if you solve this bounty, we'll give you $300 or $5,000 or whatever. And it's kind of like retroactive, right? You've done the work, show the proof of the work. If we accept it, then we issue you the funds. Rather than upfront,
Beautiful.
okay, community, you do this one thing. We'll give you $3,000 to do this one thing, and then that skewing happens, right? And so with Bloom, the communities do the work on the ground. They're already doing the work on the ground. They document it on Bloom so that it's visible and legible, and then we allow them to write the impact that it had, and we teach them and uplevel their capacity to document that well and learn how to communicate that way, which is not native to them. They're like, we see what the effect it's having. What do you mean? How do we describe this to you? Because it's so like, again, comprehensive. They aren't folks who have like a scientific background or a higher levels of education where they like think that like technocratic way kind of that often funders expect from communities.
Right.
Um, yeah, and so the system is, like I said, is really meant to bridge that gap. And so we have a grants pool. So any funds that come into that pool, and eventually as the social media cooperative becomes profitable, the profits from the co-op, similar to how profits from, if you remember, a grocery store or REI, they go back to the members.
Amazing.
And so, yeah, that pool is distributed. I mean, I can describe the mechanics of it, but basically it's
Yeah.
distributed to like according to labor hours. right now that people do. We vet the communities very thoroughly in the front end, and it's it's trust based, but we do look at it to say, is this like way out of sync with the work they're describing? That usually they're way under reporting, actually, if anything.
Right.
Um, and there's a limit on like how much they can document in any one action to protect against someone puts a huge amount through and accidentally gets approved or something. So there's some protections in place, but that pool then gets distributed proportional to individuals, as well as there's a little multiplier to their local community. Also, their treasury gets an amount, and so the grants pool goes down into all of that. Individuals use that, however they see fit. It's retroactive, purely retroactive. So they've already done it. They could use it to pay bills if they want. People are, or they need a wheelbarrow for their next action, or gas to get there or something, or to pay a community organizer. What people are most often doing with their local treasury funds is putting them into social entrepreneurship activities that will build the revenue. And I'm shocked that the system did that on the first go. I theoretically designed it that it would bootstrap regenerative economy, bioregional regenerative economies, and it already did it the first go, which I'm
Wow.
just shocked how quickly the local organizers understand what it is and how to use it and just fucking do it. So the Bloom in the Philippines, the Higanon people, they used their funds to pay women to plant this kind of medicinal tree they call a power tree, and it grows these berries that attract birds, so it builds biodiversity. There's something that that tree does with their water cycle that restores the water cycle in areas that have been deforested. And then they can make an organic fertilizer from the berries as they fall to the ground that is then packaged and sold. So it's a revenue stream for their community, which they really need revenue streams to be able to stay protect their communities from extracted developers, basically.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of other stories like that, right? But it's
Incredible.
so the funds come in through this retroactive system so that it doesn't distort the communities what they're already doing. We're in
Yes.
communication with each other, including as funders come in, bringing the funders in on that dialogue, showing them this process, teaching them how to use similar tools if they want to implement that in their fund or in the region where they're operating, and
Yeah.
or in collaboration with Bloom. And then show how the communities autonomously use those funds because they have the most perspective on the ground. They know the context, they know the people, they know the systems, they know the levers to move in the systems. And as we build more stakeholder capacity with diverse stakeholders in a region, then we're able to more powerfully move those levers and bring people along in that regenerative systems transformation with us. And so, yeah, the whole system is a vessel to accept funds from what was previously, extractive economy into rerouting the wires into piping that then creates these circular biodynamic resource flows that take into account multiple forms of capital, honor and respect people for contributing different kinds of wisdom, and allow communities to define what is the best placement of those resources to further the holistic well-being and care of the place where they are.
uh, Incredible, speechless. There's a principle in natural farming that says nature knows best, and that just demonstrates the fact that just naturally occurs with place-based projects that are really regenerative in nature. We are part of nature, and nature does know best, and just creating a system that has that feedback loop that allows for that functioning is incredible. It's incredible. Yeah, I want to read a book about that too. That's wow. Let's see. So um it's it what are a couple things that are happening right now in Bloom that you're super excited about? Maybe some local Bloom partners, or that's going to just really unlock or help Bloom the next layer of growth for Bloom, or the next layer. I don't even want to call it growth. It's more just regenerative functioning. Is there something coming up?
Yeah, and thank you for the reflection about the economic transformation model.
Oh my goodness. Mind blowing.
Thanks for the suggestion about doing the book too. It never occurred to me to write something other than the technical white paper about it.
Well, it's proving something that people want to believe, but because we're not really practicing it and we are experiencing so much distancing and separation from nature in our lives, from every aspect of our society is that way, and to actually have an organization that is putting into motion these principles that are actually living principles. They're not just theoretical, like that's somebody needs to be studying that with you, like some undergraduate I think needs to be doing a thesis with you.
Oh, that's one of the collaborations is local blooms are partnering with local universities.
Yeah,
And
cool.
we actually get a decent amount of requests for that because, like, apparently students are desperate to work on real,
Real
like, and
project.
climate things specifically across. We got this one request from a guy from the University of Massachusetts, and he teaches climate something as part of the like geology department there. I think
Yeah.
geosciences, something like that. And people come into his class from like all different majors, and they're all like, can we work on local climate projects to whether we're coming from a marketing angle or a finance angle or a some kind of like ecological practice angle.
Yeah.
So that's one area that's starting to fruit. I'm like I said, I'm really excited about the marketing. This is like the fun part. I secretly like just like want to make really good ads about all of this.
Yeah, totally.
I actually have a goal to get an ad on the Super Bowl about Bloom and regen pill people.
Let's do it. Let's host the entire halftime so that we can have all the blooms just like converge. It'll be the bloom convergence in halftime.
There's so many amazing musicians in Bloom too. Like
Oh my
Project Zero
god.
pop culture is like kind of one of my ulterior motives with like healthier messaging and music and meaning and that really like building community.
Oh
Um,
yes. Oh
yeah, so
yes.
really excited about the marketing piece and storytelling and both the local organizers are responding to that and really, I think a lot of them are looking to us to do a decent amount of the marketing. Like, for example, there's
Yeah.
a local bloom in Sicily who are doing regenerative agroforestry and they built this whole community coalition around firefighting and fire prevention on their island as well. But
Mm.
they really want to facilitate regenerative tourism and have us, market that so that it gets seen in tourism bureaus and advertising and stuff, so that people can come have a experience where they, really experience like a real community in the place and are engaged in workshops. And then the point is like take this knowledge home and apply it where you live, and so it's a much more integrative type of tourism and travel.
Mm. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. So we're coming to a close in a way, and it would be really lovely if you wanted to sort of just name one unseen contributor out loud. There's so many, and you've been naming them all along, but is there somebody that you would like to do a special shout out right now for?
Yeah, Sobi Wing is the first person that comes to heart, I would say. He was one of the main architects of our governance and brand approach. And his ancestry is like Filipino and Chinese and through three other ancestries. I'm not remembering them all right now, but he does a lot of work around like youth rites of passage, and teaching kids to connect with their ancestral, what their rites of passage are in their culture. And he does a lot of he actually taught this. Well, there's a Facebook group called Decolonize Consciousness. That's where we had a lot of the formative discussions around, what does it really look like to heal place? What does it look like to address, settler colonialism or kind of white like blinders in the environmental movement, in the plant medicine community or psychedelics community, and these different sorts of things. And then also spaces for Indigenous and people of color to talk directly with each other. Um, and yeah, he's just such a beautiful soul and really was a huge leader in our transition from our parent company. Like I said, the kind of left turn toward like new age commodity. I like to describe it as like jumped the new age shark. I forget what movie that's a reference to, jumping the shark.
After the shark. Woo! I love it.
Yeah, and he's such a beautiful soul and so profound and such a good facilitator and DJ. And I think a lot of his spirit is in the expressions of Bloom today. So yeah, shout out to Sobi Wing. He's in Vancouver, BC, or
Beautiful.
unceded Salish Coast Territory.
Thank you for that. So for anyone who's listening and they're ready to jump on, I really ready for something. What would be their next action? What would you suggest that they do to start their Bloom journey?
Yeah, we've the join Bloom flow is like decently worked out now. If you go to bloomnetwork.earth, you'll see a little join button in the top, um, or apply. I forget what it says actually, but then that will lead you. It'll show you some of the benefits of joining as a Bloom member. It'll walk you through if you're an individual or if you want to start a local Bloom hub, which provides you with like a lot more comprehensive functionality and access in the system. And then, yeah, you can also get involved as a volunteer. We have lots of volunteer opportunities listed on the site. So yeah, we're looking for professional folks to help out on the marketing team, video and content, as well as the grants team, community team, communications, like, really building more connectivity between the networks, the tech team. So yeah, professional volunteers, or if you want to start a local Bloom chapter where you live, we have a really good kind of guide to starting a monthly meetup series, and walking you through kind of like mapping what's going on in your community, so you know what maybe topics to or events to host, people and organizations to bring in to feature and build relationships with and across. Or if you could choose to do something like a compost in your neighborhood, or like a specific project as well. But there's some resources there if you like really want to do something and just need a community and a leg up and some inspiration to get started. We're like completely here for it. We have a guest blogger series as well if you want to write about really interesting topic areas that are relevant to local implementation of them. And yeah, lots of ways to get involved. And obviously, if you're a funder who's interested in more decentralized, community-led ways to effectively apply capital, get in touch with us, community@bloomnetwork.earth. And I'm happy to have an intro call with you and see, if we can help you implement something where you are, and like invite you into the Bloom system to contribute to the protocol that we have going as well.
Amazing. It's been such a pleasure to hold this space with you, Magenta. I'm just in awe of the work you've been doing, and thank you for making such a complex system really understandable in such delightful ways. I learn something from you every time we talk about Bloom. So again, thank you.
Thanks,
And
Tina. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and thanks for being here at this like sacred stage of Bloom, where we're sharing the story and the heart and inviting more people to be part of it.
yeah, okay. All love. Bye, everyone. Thank you for being here.